Well, bienvenidos a Nebraska Somos One. I'm your host, Itzel Lopez, where we honor our past, we acknowledge our present, and we build our futuro. Today, we have some outstanding Latina community leaders join us for today's show, of course. Just talking about the power of Latinas in leadership, the power of women. We all face similar challenges, and I am really amazed to share space with two wonderful persons, not only great executives, but also great amigas. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Itzel.
I'm so excited. Hey, I don't want to introduce you. I'll let you introduce yourselves, but Jennifer and Yesenia, we've been friends and longtime community leaders supporting causes that we all share and have passion about. As you introduce yourself, can you share a pivotal moment in your journey as a Latina leader that shaped your path? So whoever wants to start. And as a reminder, introduce yourself too when you're answering the question.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to repeat the question. But
sure.
Yesenia Valenzuela, and let's see, I've often been asked, like, am I from Omaha? I'm not from Omaha. I'm from Los Angeles, California. But I've been in Omaha for a very long time, a little over 15 years. So I've always told myself, once I've been in Omaha longer than almost 30 years, which was around the time that I moved to Omaha, then I'll call Omaha home. I'm just kidding. Omaha is home now. This is my forever spot. Omaha. But a little bit about myself. Born and raised in Southern California, moved to Omaha as an adult. I chose to come to Omaha, but my family moved here early 90s. And so I had a ton of family from my mother's side here in Omaha. So people often ask, like, what made you leave LA, like sunny California, to Omaha? Well, I have a lot of family here in Omaha that, I mean, oftentimes I would come and visit and spend some time, and it just kind of grew on me. Omaha's been one of those cities that I've grown. I've enjoyed living. I am raising a family here, and well, I'm currently in a transition to joining another really big firm, which I'm very excited. I don't know if I can share just yet, but come from a lot of nonprofit work in the city, and then did a little bit of work with the City of Omaha Mayor's Office, and then currently working in the architect and engineering space as business development lead. And again, that I may be able to share here as we get into the discussion where I'm going next, but that's a little bit about me. And then your question about a pivotal moment.
Yes, that shaped your journey, your career, your path.
I mean, I think I'm kind of living it. I mean, I'm in my early 40s, and throughout there was many moments like that. I think two that just come to mind. One in specific that, like, working at one of the largest community health centers in the city, really opened up my doors, opened up my eyes to the need for public health in our city. And so that really was a pivotal moment for me to discover that side of our world, of our city, the huge need that, those types of institutions bring to our folks, our community, especially those that are underserved, that are, don't have insurance, and are, suffering from chronic illnesses. And so that was a very, eye-opening moment in my career to discover that, there's just a lot of need and just a lack of accessibility to healthcare. And so that's one moment. And then now, discovering this new journey of mine where I get to really help folks that are, either redeveloping a project or need to renovate a space. Like, I don't think there's many Latinas in this space that can help folks that are interested in development or building. There's a lot of construction, lots of construction firms in the city and lots of architect and engineering firms, but there isn't a lot of Latinos in those spaces, at least not in architect and engineering. But very excited to share that. It's been eye-opening for me, but it's an incredible journey that I'm just now just launching off and getting started. So I'll leave it at that.
Excellent. Jennifer, welcome también.
Yes. My name is Jennifer Rodriguez, and a little bit of me is quite interesting, similar to I was born in LA, but when my parents separated and I moved to Mexico, so I grew up there, and I came back about the age of 15, and that's when I met you at high school. And ever since I've been here, I've moved to different states, but I always come back to even different countries, and always come back to Omaha. And now Omaha is my home.
Omaha.
Yes,
I keep
Omaha.
saying that.
Right.
Yes.
Didn't you live in Spain for a
Yes,
while?
and then came
That's
back
pretty incredible.
and stay here too.
What made you come back?
Yeah, now we all
I just
wonder.
wanted to work for the
España.
summer, and then I met the father of my kids and stayed the time, and yeah. But pivotal moment, and this is a conversation that I have with several people, is how I think sometimes we think of a career as you start one place and you end at the end or so. I just think it's not a linear pathway. And so I completely agree with you that there's many different ones. And as you were talking about it, I'm like, yes, it's true, because I have worked in so many different sectors. And then there was something that perhaps got my interest, and then I decided to switch her. So the majority of my work has been a nonprofit. I started working as a substance abuse translator for domestic violence treatment, and then moved to case manager for domestic violence victims. So I kind of switched a little bit. From there, I started to work more on MOTAC and tobacco prevention. Decided I wanted to work more with early childhood, and I spent a lot of my years in early childhood. That's why I went to Spain, because I was teaching there. Moved to research and evaluation for many years as well, and then later moved to workforce development for the last 3 years, and now my current role as a community relations and outreach for the mayor's office. I still have all those different components have helped. And just recently have been noticing and realizing a little bit more my real career pathway, or my passion, is the community relations. I feel if everything that I've been doing with all the different sectors, what I have enjoyed the most has been working with the community. And so even now I'm 40-some, I'm finally realizing what's my true...
your true calling.
My true calling,
passion,
yeah. And it's not a linear pathway. And I think that's something that sometimes we kind of feel like, we're going to go to college, we're going to get a degree, and then from there, we're going to work there.
Find a job and be there forever.
Yeah,
Right.
well, and there are milestones and seasons, and I think sometimes we lose sight of enjoying, the current season, whichever season that is. And at the time when you were in early childhood education, or when you were in government, you were living that pivotal moment. I will want to assume that you were enjoying your career, and you were thinking what's next, right? And so huge difference between when you're young, and then you're thinking you're going to grow. I remember growing up thinking I was going to be a marine biologist. I don't know where that came from. Nonetheless, I was like, well, there's not even a sea near Omaha. Yeah. So it's where would I have to work to do that? But, there are people and moments in your life that you realize I actually enjoy community outreach, and I do enjoy public speaking. I love connecting people with others. So not necessarily what I study, but certainly what fills your heart, your passion, because you gotta be passionate about what you do, right?
For sure.
But there are challenges. And I was thinking about the challenges that you have faced as Latinas in the current field, or the fields that you have been a player in, and can you share a story of how you overcame a challenge that was present in either your current career or a previous career you were in?
I can maybe.
Yeah, whoever.
Not necessarily my career, but I recently been reflecting a little bit more about it. Is something that happens when I was in high school that would have totally changed my career, or not even allow me to have one. So I briefly mentioned how I moved back to the States when I was 15. So I was learning English, right? And I remember on my senior year, seeing a lot of friends just talking about going to college, and they were talking about their applications, where they were going. And so, and I realized I have now talked to my counselor about it. And so I did. I reached out, and the response at that time was you're not documented, so you can't go to college. And I was like, yes, I am. I was born here, but I have a huge accent because I grew up in Mexico. It's wait, what?
Gosh, I'm sorry. I have to say.
Yes.
So because you had an accident, she
assumed.
It's
because I was in
stereotypical.
ESL classes, and I was a newcomer, and so they assumed my legal status was different and I couldn't attend college. That was the last semester. And at that time, I was an honor national Yeah.
Honors
What
society,
honors? Yes,
yeah.
national honors. I would had a 4.0 GPA. GPA. I mean, like, you would think that I would have no, but thankfully at that time I heard about a scholarship that was happening at Bellevue University, and that I applied and everything. So I was into biology too. Took one class of Psychology 101 and changed to counseling. So my major is in psychology. No, I do not practice at all counseling, but it just changes, things changes. And so I do think that's kind of like in my career, that might be something that perhaps would not even be that possibility for me to do what I do now if it wasn't for my resiliency and my pursuit.
Yeah, like you stood your ground,
no,
like you corrected
that's not
the
gonna
facts,
stop me.
which the facts were, no, in fact, I can and I should have access. And you use that opportunity then to inform and educate others in the stereotypes in any field. I mean, I mean, I can align very much with your story, Jennifer, but like, I mean, I can think of many stories that you have challenged. Also, Yesenia, being assumed of something else also.
Right.
Especially in the fields that you have played.
Yeah.
Can you share a story like that too?
Yeah, I fortunately, growing up in Southern California was where predominantly students were Latinos. There weren't questions like that or stereotypes, but when I moved to Omaha, it was just a big difference when it came to Latinos in Omaha, because you immediately, they put you in this bucket of you're either, not from this country or you lived here long enough where your English is pretty good, but my name, I mean, ladies, my name says it all. I mean, there's no other way of pronouncing my name in English. It's Yesenia Valenzuela. So it's a name that is pretty strong, I feel, and people to this day have a very tough time pronouncing my name. I mean, I think we can relate to that, Itzel.
Certainly with Itzel.
Itzel.
But
Oh, goodness.
in this current space, people do think, that, I mean, there's been doubt, obviously, because I like I was mentioning earlier, there isn't a lot of Latinas or women of color in these spaces that I'm currently sort of navigating, learning the architect and engineering world of the city, of what's coming and projects and things like that. So it's been tough because people see me and they kind of doubt. But those bigger doubters, I feel fuel you to push even more beyond those stereotypes. And so I think one of the biggest things is just the fact that my name is just such a strong Latina name, and people are afraid of saying my name. Therefore, they see my name tag sometimes and they may hesitate to approach me just because they're afraid of how to pronounce my name. And so that's a struggle that I've had probably since I've moved to Omaha. In Southern California, Yesenia is a very common name. In fact, it's becoming a very common name here in Omaha as well. I feel like I know probably 20 Yesenias, and I'm exaggerating. There's probably 10, and I know them all. And we spell it exactly the same. And I never hear from them, though, that like, oh, my name is such a struggle. I feel like it's always been like kind of me because of the spaces that I'm in. People just have a hard time. So
You're
I think
breaking through.
that's a challenge for me often. And I at some point I remember considering like I should just change my name. And then now I'm like, I say it loudly and proudly and pronounce it very much often the way it's pronounced. I don't try to change the pronunciation of my name because it would just sound funny. It would just sound funny if I were to try to pronounce my name in English. It would just sound funny. But that's just like a small little challenging piece, and especially in the fields and the work that I've done across the city where people are like, say that again? How do you say
Well,
it?
at least they don't say, I can't pronounce your name. I'm just going to call you Maria today. It's like, just happened.
No.
It's like, okay.
You should try.
Next. I know. That's why I'm not going to share that question. So now let's focus on cultural identity and empowerment. So you're both super successful. You're both mothers also, which, we play different roles when we're home, when we're at work, when you're socializing, etc. So how do you balance honoring your heritage with pushing for innovation and change. Like, how do you embrace that? Any stories like that?
I feel like in the current space that I'm in, again, in the work that I'm doing, it's often this misconception of like there's only certain clients and projects that we're after. Well, I mean, I think you've heard the story already, Itzel, and Jenny, you probably have heard it too, but like the biggest clients, or the majority of my clients, are Latinos. And so kind of pushing the envelope a little bit in the current spaces that I'm in to share, whether you like it or not, like the future is Latino. Like the
That's
majority
right.
of the projects that I've had the pleasure of working with or gotten very close to winning are because of the just the connections and the work that I've done in the community. But so I often have to share with people in those like architect and engineering spaces with folks that think bigger and think outside the box. Like there are many developers in our city that are now, they came from the construction world or the AE world, and now they want to become developers. And these are Latino young men and women that want to look into, affordable housing or commercial. And so there's this push that I'm trying to, as a Latina woman in this space, which I don't know of any other Latina woman in business development and in architect and engineering design world. So it's all new for me. And so I have to lean on some of my peers who are very welcoming, but at the same time, it's like there's this disbelief of like, is Latino sort of like the big, the bigger players, our clients, like, is that the future? That is the future. Those are my current clients. Like the projects that I'm working on, that I've worked on, are Latino led projects. And so it's just making sure that people not only look at a particular group of folks to do business with, but really all, and including all diversities or all communities. Because we here in Omaha have, I don't know, I think there's been talks about, or there's been mentions about, over 100 languages are spoken in our public school systems here in Omaha,
Right.
which is incredible. Over 100 languages, maybe even more, to think outside the box and to really make space for people and those potential clients that don't look like your typical client.
Yeah, and I think people are still surprised to hear, we were just celebrating the Barrientos Scholarship Foundation recipients earlier today, and seeing all of those youth, right, like getting scholarships and like joining the workforce. I mean, we're just minutes away from them to being full-time at one of these industries. Mm-hmm. And so what are we doing to honor our heritage and like not be shameful of our heritage? But Latinos continue to be the largest ethnic group and the youngest ethnic group. And so like, any stories like that, Jennifer, also where you honor your heritage, but you also challenge for change in any of the spaces that you have played?
What I've not necessarily, I think honor at the same time, but mainly breaking the stereotypes or so. And by having those conversations, so beginning to have those conversations about the possibilities, about different skills and talents our community have, and to take us out of this little square box of who we are and what we do, or so that gives opportunity for more innovative ideas. Mm-hmm. And so if anything, I think what I have been having a lot more in the jobs that I had is having those conversations and keep pushing for those things like that. Something I remember was back when I was in early childhood development, and it was we had a group of bilingual staff, and we would be just translating documents and all these different things, and we would just do it because we wanted to help our community. We wanted to make sure the information was, great for the, yeah, exactly. And then we started realizing like other people were doing some other extra stuff, and they were getting paid or getting more time, to do those things. So even those things like that, I remember that bilingual group, we got together, and it was about a year of different exchanges and going back and forth until we finally got to a point where they acknowledge that, yes, being bilingual doesn't mean that you're going to do all the things in Spanish and English. Right. Honor the fact that, yes, we have a degree, and honor that degree. And yes, if there is possibility to do some other things because we want to help our community, then get the time for that. And then also get, what's it called?
Compensated?
Yeah, compensated for those things like
it's
that.
an acknowledgement that not being bilingual or bicultural means that you're the default DEI, or you're the default, so interpreter, translator, all the other roles, yet you're also in charge of your deadlines. And you still need to meet those deadlines.
So the other thing that happens is in those places where they see a bilingual person very valuable, right?
Right.
For direct services all the time. So then what also happens is that person gets stuck in that position for so many years because they're so valuable, right? But they're not getting compensated for all the work that they do. Yeah. And so I'm still pretty proud about that. And so after that, they created different system, different program, getting compensated differently, and also a little translation department within our own department. So that way, making sure that people have the time and the opportunity to grow as well. But even just beginning having those conversations about what we can do differently, and I think that opens up opportunities for innovative ideas. And I mean, that was just many years ago. Yeah, many years ago.
Yet had a legacy of impact. And I think sometimes we forget, like, what you're breaking through, Yesenia, and this story. We often go unnoticed, meaning like we're doing all of this work. We are facing all of these challenges, even creates additional work, unnecessary work, because you will think that, large corporations, government, nonprofits, you will have the capacity and the resources to make space for this stuff. And there's, at times, ungratefully, there's no grace for all of these like front desk, entry-level jobs that you just have all of these roles, right? You're not just the greeter, you're also the office manager, you're also the translator, you're the interpreter, and you also have to do all of the other things. And that actually, as a woman, and one of the advices that I often give to other youth, regardless of whether they're Latina or not, I think as women, gotta remind ourselves that we need to stop acting like the secretary. Mm-hmm. The moment that we continue to say, oh yes, and not pause and say, oh no, I have to go at 5 o'clock. Mm-hmm. Or I also have a family, or I also would like to be participating, volunteering and mentoring programs available at my work. Like, the moment we draw attention to the potential that each individual has, and as a woman, I think in gender, especially in a man dominated workforce, because that's still a trend across all sectors. That isn't true just in construction, but many others. I can think of tech, where slightly 1 of 5 techies are women, and even there's not even a number for Latina techies. That's just an example. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about community impact and collaboration. So obviously you guys are very involved. Both of you have nonprofit background. What role does community play in your definition of success? Any of you?
Everything. It has to be part of everything. Something that with the Heartland Welfare Solutions, if I can say that, something that when I was working there for the expansion for North to South Omaha, something that was very important for me was to make sure the community knew what we were, hear from them as well. So even just listening sessions, having surveys, understanding what they wanted, based on that feedback, use that to create those different partnerships that can create those different services to the community. And so that, I think that's important in order for anything to be successful is making sure the community is part of that. And yeah, I mean, it has to be everything. Otherwise, then it's not community service. I mean,
right. And it shapes us because now, like the Heartland Workforce Solutions Center in Southeast Omaha, like, what a tremendous asset to the community. But there was a Latina behind the scenes bringing it all together so that it was a welcoming space for everyone that lives there. So thank you for doing that. Actually, I forget sometimes, some of the work that we have done together.
For sure. For me, I think community has been like life-changing. The fact that, like even the trajectory of like my career and where I've landed is because of that community background that I have and that support. And, like Jenny mentioned, like, having that connection to community, knowing that, you're someone a leader that is trusted, that people can come and lean on you, has really allowed me to really broaden my horizons and where I've ended up, because, those connections and partnerships and work that I've done across, whether it's not, nonprofit work and boards that I've served on, that has given me sort of this ladder to move upward and into different spaces that I never really thought I could, be in. The time with the city of Omaha and mayor's office, I mean, I really never considered it if it weren't because of the work that I'd previously done with lots of other agencies, leaders, working under leaders that believed in me, that helped me grow, that then were talking about me at the table where I wasn't even present. They were having conversations about me and calling me about this particular position that would be a really good fit for me. And so the people that I've worked with and nonprofit work and community work that I've done has been, I'm super grateful. And, people that have recommended me or have elevated me in spaces where I'm not a part of, like, it's been incredible. And that's what I love about Omaha is that there's this sense of community. We're all one. And yeah, we are, there's pockets of different people but we're ultimately all, kind of pushing each other, at least in the Latino community, we're pushing each other and rooting for each other. And, from the city to now doing something that I've never considered doing in my life either, but is a great fit. And at some point I remember thinking, like, doubting myself a little bit, like, what am I doing here? I've little knowledge about construction, let alone engineering and architect world. But because of that work that I've done and the trust that people have had in me and the belief, I mean, it's now pushed me and elevated me to a different space of work. And going back to your earlier question, I thought, like, when you think about, honoring your culture, it's pretty obvious, that I in my workspace, I'm probably one of 3 or 4 Latinos. And, but I love when people hear me speak Spanish to my clients. In fact, one of my clients said, Yesenia, I want you with me through the entire process. And I remember going to my boss and expecting him to be like, well, I don't know. But he understood, because I pretty much sold it to him. I said, listen, like, if I'm not a part of this whole process with this client that just spoke English as well, but just felt more comfortable speaking in their native, in her native language, like, and so, like, pushing that, those envelopes and pushing for that, like, respect of anyone really, whether it's a client or you're providing a service, like allowing them to feel most comfortable in their skin and in the language that they speak. So, I mean, community for me has just been everything.
But that kind of shows how important is a relationship between, everyone, but also with the community and honoring our culture. And by you also asking and making sure that you can be with that person is honoring that your client's culture, but then also embracing it and making sure everyone else can see that and start realizing and start taking notes on that. Like, it's important. And that's really great.
Yeah. Well, and the power between building a relationship and authentic relationships, right? And like whatever language you're most comfortable with. And certainly my default is always Spanish too. I mean, I think on the way here we were all speaking Spanish before the podcast, just for the record. It's our preferred language. I think we all shared that.
It's beautiful language.
And there are so many slangs and so many things that you say that it's like you don't have to say an entire sentence and then still like giggle about it because it's so true. It's so true. So if you want to connect with us, we might let the audience know you might want to learn some Spanish because that is how you build trust. So now talking about vision and legacy, and honoring our past, acknowledging our present, and building a futuro that is, that's why this podcast was created. We are one. We're all residents of Nebraska, yet at the same time, we're building generations of Nebraskans. We're all mothers. As a matter of fact, I'm a grandmother too. I shared that before, and it's like, we're here now for a minute, right? What do you think is your vision for the future of Latina leadership in Omaha? And what should be, like, if nothing's created, like, what should be the vision for Latina leaders?
It's a great question. I think, coming from the Barrientos Scholarship Luncheon this earlier today, I was very motivated and just excited for the future. I think Denise shared some pretty cool words about, just 1 in every 4 children that are born in Omaha or Nebraska or in the entire nation really are Latinos. And so, but not only those numbers excited me, but also the fact that each of us in our own journey have opened these doors for the future generations of Latina women in the city is just like exciting because again, I've looked, and maybe there is someone outside of Omaha, and I'm sure there are plenty of Latinas in this industry, but here locally, I think I'm one in probably the entire city. But the fact that I get to help, and I share this with any young person, that there's this, opportunity to do work that is very meaningful. The work that I do now, even, if I was doing nonprofit work before, and it was I was so passionate about it, and I serve, some of my neighbors, some of my family's neighbors, friends, like it was really incredible and empowering to be able to open these doors of opportunities and resources for just our general, like just everyone in our city. But now it's just, we're all everywhere. Like each of us is now doing something different. And from, like you mentioned, the tech world, you've been one of those leaders in our community that have opened many doors for young people to like public power industries, we have friends in those big, public service entities and government and nonprofit and small business. It's just, there's so many of us, and we continue. I think that each of us have talked about, making sure that we keep those doors open for our younger generation. So I'm just, and I think about, you said we're all mothers here, and I not only think about our future, generation of young leaders that are coming up and coming now, but I think about my children who, in the next 10 years, they're also going to be young professionals, and really like making sure that we leave that door open, that we talk about these unique spaces that we're in or unique career choices that we've made, whether they were planned or unplanned, it's just incredible. So I think that my vision for the future is just, it's bigger and stronger, and that you don't feel, these young professionals don't feel lost, that there will be others that have already created these paths for them, that it'll be easier, and then they'll just instantly, like, I wish I would have known about what I'm doing now 10 years ago. Like, this is really cool work, and it really doesn't, like, because I think of young people always kind of struggling with, like, is it a lot of schooling? Like, am I going to have to be in debt? Like, really, I also have a degree in psychology. I'm not an architect or engineer or interior designer. And here I am working with folks that have spent a lot of probably money and time in school, and I get to work alongside and keep them busy and bring projects that are pretty unique projects. And so I'm really excited for the future for our youth and for our kids. And
because you're right, opportunities are boundless, and a specific sector is not tied to a specific profession. I think that's the curiosity, right? That just to like, not because you did, like you said, you did not go to school to become an engineer or an architect, yet there are adjacent roles in every sector. And I wish that our youth will just be more willing and open to discover that even managing a restaurant, like Hurrdat Sports Bar today, just a plug, come back and visit here. I mean, there are so many roles. You don't have to be a cook. Yeah. You can be an administrator. You can be in accounting. You can be a server, but you can also be a hostess. And in all of those roles, like, there are so many opportunities, right, for upward mobility and lateral movement. And it's like, you, not because you pursue tech or engineering or psychology, like that doesn't mean that you have to become a, default teacher, counselor, or therapist or whatever, It's like, no, the opportunities are really boundless. You're so right. Sure. You're so right.
To be, have
curious, that curiosity,
curious and courage,
and that courage to actually jump into the next phase. Yes. Because sometimes that could be kind of like challenging. Like, well, I'm doing fine here, and
why would I move? Why would I leave?
Exactly. Yeah. It seems okay to have my degree. It's okay. Yeah. But you don't know what could be.
Yeah. What about you, Jenny? What do you think the vision for the future of Latina leadership in Omaha should look like?
I just want to be able to see more of us in those places. I think, like you said, right now is your case, my case, the only Latina too in office too. And so it's like, I want to see more of that. And I think that will also kind of help everyone, especially me as a Latina. Actually, someone was mentioning at the office, like, hey, I always see you in the community events and you're so bubbly and just like radiate, but you come back here, not so much. I'm like, I'm the only Latina here. Like, I come back and I want to dance salsa, I want to speak Spanish, and I have no one to talk to in Spanish. So I just go back and, so being able to see more of that. I know that right now we have the window open, let's say, and we're creating a door for our next generations, but I wish there was a gate open, wide open, and there could be so many of us in all these different sectors and fields and just share them.
Well, that's a great wrap up. And as we wrap up the podcast, I think it's important for our community to learn, about some of the things that are happening in Nebraska, which is over 12% of the entire population is now Latinos. Over 14% of the population in Douglas County are now Latinos. And over 60% of all the residents in Southeast Omaha are Latinos. So,
and those are numbers,
now, I know.
Those are numbers from 2020.
I know. I keep reminding myself, like, maybe those
reminded me of that today. I was like, oh gosh, that's almost 6 years ago.
I know. I'm truly excited to learn what those numbers are by 2030. So that means in 2030, we are all canvassing, make sure the census is completed correctly. Okay. But with that, as we wrap up the podcast today, I would like for you guys to share, what would you want your legacy, your personal legacy to be? Not just as a leader, but as a change maker in Omaha and, of course, Nebraska.
Oh, my goodness.
I know it's hard because you want your kids to remember you by something and the community by something, but
yeah, I think we're creating that legacy with the organizations that we're very passionate about and are pushing to move the needle forward to create these spaces for a welcoming city, really, because I feel like every time I do work with LEDC, the Latino Economic Development Council, and we get together and there's these moments of, sort of high level, like, trying to picture what the future of some of the projects that we're currently working on. But I feel like that's going to be one of the biggest legacies. There's been so much support behind the work that LEDC is doing that I feel, we're really the group that has accomplished so much in such small time, like little time that we've come together. And I'm just excited for the future of LEDC. I think it's the momentum of it is growing so quickly. I mean, I was sharing this with Itzel not long ago. I was in Elkhorn in a tips group, and someone was talking about LEDC, and I'm like, I'm in Elkhorn, for God's sake, and they know about what we're doing down south. Like, that's incredible. Like, the message about LEDC has spread like wildfire in our city, and I think it's because it's been very actionable. Everything that we're doing is like, let's go do it. Let's go do it. There's not a lot of lost time. Like, we're moving fast, and it has to be that way. I was looking at this message last night about one of the things that this leader was talking about that makes her different from everyone else. And she was talking about how fast she moves. Oftentimes we think about like, oh, let me think about that. Let me get back to you in a week or two. And she's like, that's wasted time. That's wasted money. That's wasted.
We might not even be here.
Yeah. And I think, and it just made me think about LEDC, how quickly we've moved. And at some point we thought, let's slow down. And obviously our leadership was like, no, let's keep pushing. And we were like, okay. But that's one of the things that it's a differentiator from other nonprofits in the city, that we're just moving, and we're moving fast. But there's been a lot of action and a lot of really goal setting, but also achieving a lot of those large goals that we've set out to do. And I think because we're moving so fast, I feel like that's going to be one of the legacies that I leave behind. And I talk to my oldest about what we're doing at the plaza every time we drive by the carniceria or the Banana International Bakery. Like, you see that space? That's going to be transformed into a Jean Leahy Mall for the side of the city that's been, yearning for something like this from like 20 years ago when it first became an idea. So I think that's one of the things that I look forward to leaving behind for my children and their children, and so on.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. It's something I would like to add about LADC too. It's just, yes, it's moving and it's creating all these great things and momentum, but it's elevating our communities, elevating our traditions and culture. And that level of all the different things that are happening, like the events and how things are happening, it's just really refreshing. And it's just so different from many people that I keep hearing, like, oh wow, like this event was fantastic, like wait until you see the next one, or wait until you see what's going to happen next, right? Because and I think that's also kind of like breaking that stereotype of our community and who we are. And so it's not just, yes, it's creating this development, but it's also is creating a new not a stereotype, but just a new way of seeing the Hispanic community as well. And it's a bigger picture too.
We're elevating the profile of Latinos and how we accomplish things.
Yes.
And not just say things and dream things, but we actually do.
Yeah. Very actionable.
We're so excited. What about your personal legacy though?
I think just a little bit of everything that I do. I'm always trying to be, meaningful intentional too with the things that I'm always trying to do. But something that I can now, it's hard for me to acknowledge that, to even put that in words, just because of the way I am. But even now, just being able to drive in South 24 and see the building, the HWS
that's
building.
That is
and that has so much memories for me, because I graduated from South High, right? Yeah. And having that building next door. And so sometimes I drive about it and I'm like, oh my God, I made that happen. Like, that's my baby.
The tears and sweat that you put into that project.
Yes. So even like that is just very rewarding.
Cool.
And sometimes I just get videos and I send it to my dad and he's like, oh, that's my girl. I'm like, yes, but not just something that is physical, but in general, just being able to help as much as I can, like the Barrientos Scholarship Foundation. Like, I just spend my night just doing lanyards. It might be whatever. However, I just wanted to make a special time for the families that walking in and feeling special and having flowers and bouquets and having something meaningful and being recognized. So even something little like that, I feel like it's meaningful in a way. So that's how I leave my mark, from something as just making flower arrangement for parents and scholarship recipients to something like the building or so.
Well, and I think what we forget is a lot of times in the busyness of life, being a mom, being an executive, being, a board member in volunteer capacity, like, we lose sight of the small things. And I think what you're saying, Jenny, and even what you shared about your son too, Yesenia, like, I think those are the times that when we reflect back, and it's like that was meaning. Like that really meant everything, right? Like everything. The late nights, or like, and people question me too, including that, oh, it's how do you have energy to do X, Y, and Z, and that, and this, and that. It's like, but if we don't show up, to your point, if we don't show up, then are we going to be present, right? So as we wrap up the podcast, I want to remind our audience, and thank you again for joining us in today's conversation, of a quote that I read recently about listening to learn. And we're hoping that this podcast, teaches you a little bit about us personally, but also about the future of Omaha and Nebraska, and then speaking to heal. And I hope that this conversation healed a little bit of your journey with us today. So,
thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
That's a wrap.